Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladettes, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. By the time 2006 had rolled around, we'd already seen the release of the Xbox 360 and were well on the way to seeing the Sony PS3, which would release towards the end of that year. So it's safe to say games as a medium were starting to evolve from the mostly arcadey-like feel that we had towards a more blockbuster design. It was definitely a trademark of the 7th generation of consoles, but it's not to say the 6th didn't have its fair share. Right at the end of the 6th generation's life cycle, a game from developers Criterion Games, mostly known for the Burnout series, released what is possibly the most cinematic experience the 6th generation could offer, simply titled Black. Far from the only FPS to release for the 6th generation of consoles, Black is notorious for having what is considered to be some of, if not the best graphics and sound for its time. Now, for full disclosure, I am playing this on the PCSX2 emulator, and I am uprising the game, but you can see how well some of these textures and models have aged. It's really damn impressive what they managed to do with, by today's standards, extremely weak hardware. I mentioned the word cinematic, and honestly, it's the best way to describe the experience of Black. If you want to have a little bit of fun while watching this video, drink every time I say the word cinematic. Following a Black Ops agent known as Jack Keller, whom is being interrogated about his prior missions that involves terrorists, and seemingly his inability to follow basic orders like stand still. The story isn't really the main focus, oddly enough. Although it is intriguing, the way in which it's delivered through cutscenes makes it a little bit harder to follow than most games of its era. As I said before, it's very cinematic in its approach. I can appreciate what they were trying to do, but it's very evident that this is the early days of making something a lot more serious and seemingly realistic, or at least something in the vein of a TV show. So, is it a game that is style over substance? Is it worth revisiting all these years later, especially given how many incredible FPS games we've had since? There's no real way for me to put this simply, and from my perspective, it's somewhere between a game worth replaying and one that you might just want to leave in the past. Functionally, the game works really damn well, and yes, its presentation is going to carry the overall experience, but the game seems to have a slight identity crisis going on. By that, I mean it was pretty common for the time for most FPS games to be run and gun. Sure, we had stealth games, but if you have health packs, high ammo counts, and tons of explosions, you would expect the game to want you to make the most of this. However, Black doesn't seem to want that. It seemingly wants you to play slow and very methodical, which I don't have an issue with, but given the amount of enemies it wants you to take out, especially by the end of the game, it feels like they couldn't decide what they wanted to go for. You definitely can meld the two systems, but it just feels like a bit of a clash at points during the experience. What is nice though is the fact you could use either playstyle throughout the game, as long as you can deal with the game's less than stellar aiming. In saying that though, this could be down to the fact I am emulating, but I do remember missing what felt like clear headshots, thus alerting enemies to my presence, pretty much instantly ruining any stealth plans that I had. In what is a saving grace, the way in which most of these encounters are laid out with the level design means if you fail a stealth approach, it's not going to carry over to the next group of enemies, because these levels are really damn expansive, way more than I remember any PS2 or Xbox game being, especially while looking this good. So you failed an attempt on a stealth run. How does the general combat feel? Well, the gameplay is a major highlight. Each weapon sounds incredible and it gives them so much punch. What detracts from this though is how overly bullet spongy enemies are. The enemy health becomes a real issue by the late game, as I mentioned before, because you're going to have to fight waves upon waves of men, and this makes it feel like you just can't take them out fast enough. It really drives home that identity crisis I mentioned earlier, and it can leave a bit of a bad taste in your mouth, at least it did for me, because it creates an artificial difficulty. Even on easy, you can get absolutely massacred. It's not uncommon for games to be overly difficult in order to pad out their runtime, and I think Black is a little bit guilty of this. Your first playthrough might take 6 to 8 hours, but if you know what you're getting into and what to expect, you're probably only going to have a 3 to 4 hour long affair. It doesn't mean that the game overstays its welcome, but it does mean that outside of finding intel, there's nothing really else to the game. There's no more secondary objectives, no in-game challenges, and it just feels like it's lacking that meat on the bone. It's not all doom and gloom though. As mentioned, the presentation is next level, and it wouldn't have felt out of place as a 360 or PS3 launch title. One aspect I think gets overlooked from Black is its OST. Just to use our favorite word of this video, the soundtrack is extremely cinematic, and it really encapsulates the grandeur they were going for. Composed by Chris Tilton, I would say it's amongst some of his best work. Everything is super fitting. Honestly, with the amount of explosions and over-the-top action, the soundtrack would probably fit right at home in a Michael Bay movie. Another positive is the amount of different weapons that you get access to, with a variety of pistols, SMGs, assault rifles, shotguns, a sniper, machine gun, and a couple of different RPGs. You won't find yourself running out of options when it comes to dealing with enemies. You also get grenades, where you're able to carry up to 9, in which if you throw one of these towards the enemy, their AI, which is pretty solid in most cases, are smart enough to run away if they notice it. Also, they will sometimes yell out, "Granada!" which to this day is something I still yell every time I throw a grenade because I played this game so much as a kid. Going back to the enemy AI though, most enemies are really damn solid with the exception of the shotgun enemies. They do tend to be a little bit brain dead as they will run straight at you with no regard for their life. I found myself more often than not just meleeing them as it was quicker than just shooting them, since they are a little bit too bullet spongy for their own good. The friendly AI is also really solid. Although they will miss a lot of shots, they will still take out terrorists instead of you needing to do everything yourself. Where Black really begins to shine to me is actually its controls. Though slightly different from the standard that was to come with the 7th generation consoles, the actual control scheme of Black to me is a rather innovative experience, even if aiming can feel a little bit off thanks to that minimalistic crosshair. Black basically boils down to a game that is fun to play, where the weapons feel great, the overall experience is immersive and impressive, but it does have its issues. Some of the enemy AI, the amount of health they have, the game's length, the lack of multiplayer and co-op, and you have a game that leaves you wanting a little bit more. If EA wasn't EA, we could have had a franchise that was something special. I don't think it would have rivaled something like Battlefield, but it would have had its own fans for sure. A stealthy based FPS with an extremely cinematic approach to its design wouldn't be out of place today. I would have loved to have seen a follow-up, and even though we did technically get a spiritual successor in Body Count, we never got something official. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladettes, whoever, whatever, it brings to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Criterion's Black. Do you have words from video games or little phrases that you've heard that you repeat like I do with Granada? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. If you want to go that extra step, you can hit the subscribe button. If you want to go that extra mile, you can support me on Ko-fi from just $1 a month like these lovely people here. With that said, I will see you guys in the next one. Stay safe out there. Bye.